What if the person who saved Juliette was never doing it for her at all? What if Robert Sims kept Bernard alive, swapped the pills, planted the nurse, and orchestrated every silent move not because he cared about the truth, but because the system that was supposed to reward his loyalty finally showed him he was disposable? Because after Silo Season 3, Episode 5, I genuinely think Sims may be the most important character in the entire show right now, and not for the reasons most people are talking about. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Breakdown Epic. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Now today, we are breaking down why this episode quietly proved that the real war inside Silo 1-8 is no longer between the people and the algorithm. It is between two people who share a marriage, a child, and completely opposite ideas about what the silo should become. And in my opinion, that is why this episode hits so much harder than a standard rebellion setup. Because this is not about heroes rising against a machine. This is about a man who spent his entire career being the machine's fist, finally deciding that his knuckles are bruised enough. Let me explain why I think Sims' motivation is deeper than loyalty to Juliette or even hatred of the system, because there is a pattern here that most people are not connecting yet. Sims did not suddenly become a good person overnight. What changed was not his morality. What changed was his position. For years, he enforced rules without questioning them. He removed threats. He silenced problems, he protected Bernard, and in return, he expected to be trusted with the full picture. But the system never gave him that. Bernard kept him at arm's length. The algorithm literally told him to leave the room when it wanted to speak with Camille. And his own wife, the person he shares a life with, chose obedience to the machine over honesty with him. That is not a redemption story. That is a resentment story. And resentment, in my opinion, is a much more interesting fuel than heroism, because it means Sims is not fighting for freedom. He is fighting because the system humiliated him. And the terrifying part is that those two motivations can look identical from the outside, while meaning completely different things on the inside. Now here is where I think the show is doing something genuinely brilliant with the Sims and Camille dynamic, because on the surface, they look like two people who simply disagree about strategy. But if you really watch how the episode frames them, especially that final shot where she is literally above him on a higher level, looking down, the show is telling us something much darker. This is not a disagreement. This is a fracture, and it mirrors exactly what happened between Bernard and Sims in earlier seasons. The person in power keeps the person beneath them just informed enough to be useful, but never enough to feel equal. That is what the algorithm does to people. It does not just control information, it creates hierarchies of trust that slowly poison every relationship around them. Camille is now doing to Sims exactly what Bernard once did, and Sims, having already lived through that betrayal once, is not going to tolerate it a second time.
That is why I think his decision to save Bernard was not emotional. It was strategic. Bernard is the only person alive who understands the full architecture of the system. If Sims wants to fight the algorithm, he needs someone who knows where every wire connects. Juliette brings public legitimacy, Bernard brings institutional knowledge, and Sims himself brings the one thing neither of them has: access to both sides of the wall without anyone fully realizing he has switched. Now, let me rewind for a second, because there is a detail in this episode that I think most people glossed over but could end up being massive: the Pez dispenser. On the surface, it looks like just another memory-triggering artifact. Juliette holds it, her memories flood back, and the audience cheers because she finally remembers Silo 17 and the safeguard protocol. But think about what that object actually is. It is the same Pez that Daniel and Helen had in the Old World timeline 350 years ago. That means this tiny piece of plastic survived the collapse of civilization, the construction of the silos, and centuries of controlled history. Someone preserved it. Someone made sure it ended up inside Silo 18, and someone made sure it was available at the exact moment Juliette needed it most. That is not coincidence. That is design. And it raises a question that I think Season 3 is building toward very carefully. Were the founders preparing for someone like Juliette from the very beginning? Not her specifically, obviously, but the type of person she represents. Someone whose personality resists chemical suppression.
Someone whose curiosity cannot be permanently erased. Someone who, given the right artifact at the right moment, can reconstruct herself against the system's will. If that is true, then the Pez is not just a memory trigger. It is a key left behind by people who knew that one day the system they built would need to be challenged by someone strong enough to survive the truth. And that possibility connects directly to what I think is the most underrated storyline in this episode, the light bulb crisis. Because while everyone is focused on Juliette's memory and Sims' betrayal of Camille, the show quietly drops one of the most terrifying practical threats the silo has ever faced. Critical supply is running out of irreplaceable resources. Light bulbs that cannot be manufactured inside the silo are being stolen at a rate that could leave the entire structure in permanent darkness within 2 years. No light means no farms. No farms means no food. No food means everyone dies. Not from monsters or algorithms or safeguard protocols. From starvation in the dark. That is the kind of threat that feels almost too real for a sci-fi show. And I think that is exactly why it works so well. It reminds us that the silo is not just a political system, it is a physical one. And physical systems break when someone removes the wrong piece. Now here's my own theory about who is behind the thefts, because I do not think it is random criminals. I think whoever is stealing from critical supply may be connected to the same network that built the hidden tunnels, the sealed routes, and the infrastructure beneath the silo that people like Walker have quietly known about for years.
What if there was a group inside Silo 18 that has been preparing for a different kind of future? Not rebellion in the loud public sense, but a slow, quiet extraction of resources toward a hidden exit or a sealed-off section that the general population does not know exists. If the founders built contingency routes and emergency infrastructure beneath the silo, and if certain people across generations have known about them, then the light bulb thefts could be evidence of a parallel survival plan. Not everyone escaping, just the people who know enough to see what is coming. And that would also explain why the murder happened, because if someone like Orla stumbled onto evidence of that operation, she would not just be a witness, she would be a threat to a plan that has been running quietly for years. Now let me lock in a prediction. I think Sims does not survive this season, and I think his death, if it comes, will be at Camille's hands, or at least her decision, because the algorithm has already shown that it views him as less essential than her, and once Camille realizes how deeply he has been working against her, she will face the exact same choice Bernard once faced: protect the system or protect the person standing in front of you. Bernard chose the system. Camille will too. And that will make Sims' ending tragic, yes, but also strangely redemptive, because he will have died not as the enforcer he spent years being, but as the one person who finally refused to let the machine decide who mattered. Before I wrap up, here's the fast-fire version of what Episode 5 really confirms. Sims is not redeemed, he's redirected. His loyalty shifted from the system to himself and his son. Camille and Sims are now on opposite sides of the same marriage. The Pez dispenser is not just a memory trigger, it is a 350-year-old artifact that someone preserved on purpose. Juliette's memory recovery is the mid-season turning point. The light bulb crisis is a physical threat that could destroy the silo from within, and whoever is stealing from critical supply may be running a parallel survival operation that nobody in leadership knows about yet. So overall, I think Silo Season 3, Episode 5 is the strongest episode of the season because it finally shows us that the real conflict is not between truth and lies. It is between two versions of loyalty, one that serves the system and one that serves the people the system was supposed to protect.
And right now, the man standing between those two versions is the same person nobody trusted a season ago. But anyway, that is my breakdown of Silo Season 3, Episode 5, and why I think Robert Sims may end up being the most tragic and most important character of the entire season. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, do you think Sims survives the season, or is his story heading toward a sacrifice that finally proves which side he was always on? I will catch you in the next one.